Hello guys, and welcome to my Shadow of Change DLC review. Now before I kind of get into the video, because this is going to be a two-part video where in the first part I'm going to talk about the DLC review from my perspective, and then also me talking about the future of my YouTube channel and content creation future overall. But I do want to make kind of a side note here that I am making this video on August 28th, and so I do not have access to the patch notes at this time. So some of the things I may be talking about could be addressed once we do finally get the patch notes on Wednesday. But I just wanted to put that in there now. So obviously some things are subject to change, but by and large, I feel like the majority of the things that I'm going to discuss in this review are not really subject to change before you guys will have access to it for yourselves. And so that's kind of where I'm going to move forward in with this video, is just coming from the position where I'm at now with the knowledge that I have from things that I've been able to talk about with other creators, from me playing personally, things that I've seen other creators do on their streams, and then so on and so forth. So again, just wanted to put that kind of little side note in there, just so in case someone doesn't go, oh, you mentioned this there, but they've actually fixed that. Well, I know, it's just I'm getting ahead of the curve here a little bit. But anyway, let's jump into the review. So the first thing I want to talk about are the good things that I like about the Shadows of Change DLC and the kind of patch 4.0 that's kind of come along with it. The first thing that really kind of caught my attention is that the lords are fun to play. There's no doubt about it from my point of view anyway. The lords between the Changeling, the Kislev Lord with Mother Ostankia, and then we have Grand Cathay with Wanbo. All of them are fun to play, in my opinion. They have good faction effects, good lord effects. They have great faction-wide bonuses that all of them provide. The mechanics that they each have are fun to utilize and play through. I really enjoyed being able to kind of change things with Wanbo, with the compass, and the various kind of stone and steel things and shenanigans that you can pull. Obviously with the Changeling, being able to just pop down cults all around in the Empire or wherever you teleport to in the map and just spread utter chaos, changing forms into new lords. And obviously with Mother Ostankia and her hag witches, you know, being able to protect the world against chaos, all of the elemental beasts, you know, being able to use those, the things in the woods, all the new units that and mechanics that came with the lords, I really liked. I really did enjoy them. I was able to use them throughout the majority of my campaigns. I didn't feel like any of the new units were severely lacking in any shape, way, or form. They all really served a purpose. They all worked well together. And so I think that was a definite positive about all three of them, is that none of them were like, well, I'm probably never going to play this lord again. You know, they're definitely, all three of the lords are definitely a lord that I could see myself playing down at, you know, for in the future. It's not a kind of one and done thing, because there are a lot of different things that you could do. I mean, now that I'm on Mother Ostankia here, I mean, if you go to the map, I could, you know, in my campaign that I did on my channel, I stayed over here on the western side, but I definitely could have migrated to Kislev. I could have, you know, done something completely different. And same thing with Wanbo, starting in Lustria, could have gone back down to Cathay. With the Changeling, I could have moved to Cathay right away as well, just to kind of do more of the lore side of things, and not only the lore, but the trailer that we saw and whatnot, kind of the siege versus Cathay again, and at the gates and whatnot, that kind of stuff. So there is, I think, a good amount of replayability with the factions, specifically, and the lords themselves. But overall, I really don't have too much to complain about in terms of the lords. They're good lords, powerful, you know, battle combatants, good legendary lords in terms of leading a faction. Very powerful. I think they make great additions to the factions that they are part of. And again, at the end of the day, they're fun. They're enjoyable. They're fun to use in any way, shape, or form in the game. Good job. The rest of it, though, kind of comes from more about what's going to come in the patch that I really liked about the DLC. Because a lot of the stuff with the lords and even the heroes that you can get with Hellbrass, the hag witches, and whatnot, a lot of that's fairly subjective, because obviously, you know, not everybody is going to enjoy everything about Mother Ostankia or the Changeling you know, whether it's the Zangors or the Trice, or, you know, whatever it may be. Everyone's going to have different opinions on whether or not they actually like a lord or a hero or a unit, whatever it may be. But one thing I think that is going to be something that everyone is going to really like, and that I personally enjoy, are the changes to the campaign difficulty, battle difficulty, and the big change is the AI stat modifier. I have found a sort of a new fondness of the game because the campaign very hard difficulty and battle difficulty of being very hard, I'm still able to have the AI, you know, get those lower upkeep costs. They're still going to field more armies. They're going to get that free experience. They're going to move around the campaign map a little more, and the battles, you know, they're not going to waste ammo needlessly. They're going to avoid spells. They're going to make, you know, quote unquote smarter decisions, as much as the AI can be smart in Total War Warhammer. But they also then don't get the just blatant cheats, because personally I was getting very sick and tired of clan rats beating chosen, you know, especially when chosen are costing, you know, me 360 370 gold a turn. It just was making it very frustrating. And not to mention, for me individually, I've purchased up to this DLC, I have purchased every DLC that Total War has to offer, and so it was getting very redundant, very repetitive, and and because of that, the replayability of Warhammer in general was decreasing at a drastic rate, because I was playing, you know, whether it was the high elves with their missile units, Skaven with their weapons teams, you know, wood elves with their treemen, whatever it may be. I was recruiting the same units over and over and over again. I wasn't seeing, you know, I wasn't doing any variety in my campaigns because of those stat bonuses that the AI was blatantly getting. Because I believe up here at the highest tier, this is what the AI was getting on very hard battle difficulty before this change. But now you're able to slide it if you want to give them 2%, 5%, 10%. If you want to reduce it, even, you know, all the way down, so they actually have a penalty if you want to do that. But for me, testing it out where it was just zeroed, like they weren't getting any debuffs, they weren't getting any buffs, it was bringing a new enjoyment to the game, because I was having units that, you know, statistically should be performing better than the AI, and they actually were. So it was nice for me to be able to actually build, you know, for example, if I just go to a dwarf campaign here and just set up, you know, it was nice being able to actually use their infantry. It was nice to be able to use a combination of their infantry, missile units, their artillery, and not just their heroes and missile units and artillery. You know, all these cool units, their DLC units, lizardmen with their dinos being a melee infantry unit. The fact that those melee infantry units were actually now performing as they should was a very nice change and nice addition to the game that I think has definitely been missing, because it just has been really limiting replayability for a lot of players, and the whole like kind of stigmatism, like, well, if you want to succeed on this difficulty, you have to play this certain way. And the reality is that's not necessarily true. I really have thought ever since I've gotten into Warhammer about 4 years ago that is not how a game should be. The player should be allowed to dictate what is fun for them, and it shouldn't be as simple as just, we'll just lower it on put it on a lower difficulty. So with the stat modifier, I really like that change. It's a big change. I really hope you guys check it out in your own campaigns and just mess with that a little bit. You know, whether, you know, if you want to put it at 0, kind of like what I do, or if you're a person that really likes the challenge, you can put it all the way back up, whatever you want to do. But the biggest thing is it lets each person individually dictate that. And I hope down the road that, you know, the game continues, whether it's with Warhammer 3 or a new Total War title, that they actually kind of expand upon this. You know, give the AI, you know, the stat modifier is a good change, but do it where the AI gets more money, more growth, more armies, that kind of stuff. Like, make all of that stuff customizable to just create that super unique experience for each campaign that a player may want to play in their campaign. So really liked it. It was a really nice addition, and I yeah, just like 2 thumbs up. I really have no complaints on that. I think it was a simple change, but it's going to make a really big impact for a lot of people. Another thing that I want to load into a actual campaign here for you is just things that have been popping up on the campaign map. 2 things really that I've noticed in playing all these campaigns. I've probably played a combination of 10 to 15 different campaigns, whether, between all of the new 3 legendary lords. And one thing that I definitely have seen is that the anti-player bias has been turned down quite a bit. It's really nice. It's not necessarily that, enemies that are right by you aren't coming and attacking you, because that's definitely not the case. The enemy is still coming to engage you. But when you're playing as Cathay, especially when you're launching your caravans, to the Empire, to the Badlands, to the Border Princes, through the Badlands, and into Kislev and Norska and all the other places that you can traverse to, the enemy just doesn't blatantly declare war on you because they met them. I haven't really seen enemies, coming all the way from, I know this is a Mother Ostankia campaign, and until I moved to Kislev, I wasn't seeing Azazel and Bellicor coming all the way over here to the Iron Sand Desert Province and trying to attack me here. Same with the Demon Prince. He's not coming all the way over here to the southwest to come and attack me when he's fighting numerous battles over here. And same with Bellicor, with Bretonia and Reichland. So I do like that change. It's definitely needed, or was needed. And it's just a refreshing change where the enemy isn't just so hell-bent on destroying the player that they actually are concerned with what's going on. If you're Bellicor, you're actually concerned with what's going on in your provinces. You're not just totally abandoning your province for the sake of maybe getting one battle in against the player. So really good change there. And I hope they continue to, another thing that they just continue to expand on that in terms of diplomacy as well. Because I have noticed in terms of diplomacy, factions that actually like you don't have a negative aversion to, it's pretty easy now to get some trade agreements. I know I already have trade with Corone here, but I know from experience from playing these different campaigns, I have loads and loads of trade agreements going on. I got loads of non-aggression pacts going on, because the AI, just the tweaks in diplomacy has made a lot more sense, where they're not just like, screw you, you're the player, I'm not going to do any diplomatic treaties with you, because we have similar enemies, where you're not a threat to me right now, and we have bigger fish to fry, basically. So I do like that little change in diplomacy. I was able to see it in all 3 campaigns. It wasn't just they changed it for one and not the other. So really good changes there. I hope they continue to expand on things within diplomacy and tweak things a little more. But at least it's a step in the right direction. So I am very happy to see that. Now the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the good things overall in the DLC review, coming with the DLC in the patch, are the minor campaign missions for like money or campaign resources that you can achieve throughout the campaign. There have been several little things that have popped up, like destroying or defeating the Lord's army. I know those pop up quite a bit, but I've getting like capture and occupy the settlement, or raiding, or win the following battle. I know this is a hex, but throughout the campaign it's been like, fight this enemy lord and you'll get 2,500 gold and like, I don't know, 50 spirit essence, something like that. It's again something that I've seen in all 3 campaigns, whether I've been playing as Mother Ostankia, Wanbo, or the Changeling. And it's just really nice that way, as you're progressing through your campaign, when you're working towards the victory conditions, whether you go for the short victory or long-term victory, or even the domination victory, whatever your preference, at least you're working towards something minor as you're working towards through the bigger things, the longer victory conditions in your campaign. That way, for me anyway, I wasn't feeling like it was super like groggy and grindy to get to that, like, okay, like I've gotten the short campaign victory, but oh dang, like I still have to get 2 more hexes. I still have to do the ultimate hex with Mother Ostankia here, and then I can get the long victory achieved. So it was just nice to have kind of something in between that time where it feels like I was still progressing in the game while still playing the bigger part. So I think it just helped retain some excitement in it, that I'm like, well, I don't have 20, 30 turns before this is going to happen, or 40 turns, or whatever it may be. So it was a really good change there. I like that. I hope they keep that around. I hope they add that in, or has been added into more campaigns. I know during this time I just focused a lot on the new factions, or the new lords rather. And so I haven't been able to test it out with every other race in the game as to whether or not that's been expanded into kind of their campaigns as well. But really good things. And I really hope all the good things that I've talked about so far in the video are just things they continue to expand on. You know, making the lords. I really want to load into the Wanbo campaign, because it's something that Wanbo is like the epitome of what I was hoping a legendary lord would be like. Not only is he a very powerful battle commander, but he's also a fantastic leading like lord, you know, leader of a kingdom, like leader of a faction. It's just fantastic what they've done, and I hope they continue to elaborate on that. It was things that I was talking about before the DLC came out, before I even had access to it, and it's just a really positive step in the right direction, because really I feel like that's what a legendary lord should be like. You know, a legendary lord shouldn't just have like one little extra trait providing a little bit of buff compared to a generic lord. But if we look at Wanbo, he's got 2 faction-wide bonuses right here from the Celestial Administration with the Lord Recruit rank and Hero Recruit rank. That's awesome. He has the construction cost reduction, 10% faction-wide. Awesome. The diplomatic relations, it's a global bonus. That's awesome. And there's just a lot of things like that here again with the hero action success chance for Astromancers, all characters, hero capacity for Astromancers +2, all of those global bonuses, and even here in the Armies of the Celestial Court, 4 of them in 1 skill point here alone. Army ability uses for the Compass bound spells +2 for all of them. Bonus versus infantry for the new units, all armies. Spell resistance, mastery of the elemental winds. Like, all of that is fantastic. That's what a legendary lord should be like, because they are a legendary lord. You know, they are, you know, they're the cream of the crop in that faction. You know, they're better than your generics, in this case, the Celestial Generals. Like, they should be better than your basic lords, and you should want to be able to utilize them. So, it's definitely a very nice addition. Again, down the road with future DLCs and whatnot, I hope it's something they continue to do, because it's just very nice. And you just kind of, for me anyway, I grew more of an attachment to, in this case, Wanbo, because he was such a pivotal aspect of my campaign, because I needed him to get more levels so I could get all those bonuses. I know in this campaign I haven't gotten them yet, but it's just, again, the fact that he even has those to get. And it's just a really nice change, and they did a really good job there. Now, with all that being said, with the good things we've talked about, it's almost been 18 minutes of talking about the things I've liked overall. I know there are a lot of little tweaks here and there that I did not cover, but for me, those were sort of the big ones that I really noticed that really took a hold on me. But there's always some bad aspects to it, and I really do want to talk about that. The first one being kind of the overall arching theme here is, despite the fun I've been having with it, even with the new lords, the new units, the stat modifier, the biggest problem with this DLC is the price point. I know it's been harped on a lot by a lot of creators already, but the price is just not worth this DLC. It's just not worth the bang for the buck. Unfortunately, even with all the positive things that are coming with it, there are so many negatives that come with it that it's just like, I just don't understand what's been going on. The first thing being, more bugs have been introduced into the game. I know that people, you know, the community has been messaging Creative Assembly on Reddit, Twitter, all this stuff, talking about like patches, fixing things that are broken instead of adding things onto it. But one that I know that you guys will get to experience is just, I'm just going to list a few. There are several. I'm sure you guys will encounter them yourself. But Nakai getting Croxigors, yes, that is being fixed. But now Scarbrand doesn't. The building for Scarbrand, for example, he can no longer recruit Minotaurs in his initial province. And so it's just little things like that that have been extremely frustrating. The Changelings campaign for schemes, there are several schemes in his, if I load up my campaign I was doing the other day on the channel, his schemes are not working correctly if they've been accidentally completed by another faction. For example, if a lord gets wiped out, it says the quest is no longer available, but when you teleport there, the quest is there, and when you do it, you don't get that bonus. However, in this campaign that I'm actually loading up, for example, I went to Araby, And when I went to Araby, I was supposed to be able to attack the Black Pyramid of Nagash, the Black Tower of Arkan, and if I show you guys here very quickly, I should have gotten Sandwalkers, which is a upkeep cost reduction and immune to desert attrition. It says I've completed 4 out of 3, but I didn't get that bonus. Now, in terms of Cathay, was never in Cathay. I never personally defeated the Spirit of the Jungle or the Defenders of the Great Plan, but I got Barrier and Armor for all characters. And then boom, Barrier and Armor for all characters. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies with this DLC and patch where some things are working, some things are not working, and it's very frustrating. It's like they looked at it and they created it, but they didn't really test it out, and it's just been very frustrating playing along with it, where I'm like, well, this isn't working as intended, but that's a shame. And I've tried my best during the live streams and whatnot to just kind of be like, move on from it, because I didn't want to focus it on too much. But nonetheless, they are there. And kind of with like mechanics like this not working, or obviously the mechanics that are broken, for example, like the caravan system. And that just comes down to a lack of game testing. Like anyone at Creative Assembly could have loaded up a Wanbo campaign, played 10 turns, and discovered that the caravan system was broken, making you 100,000 gold, per caravan by turn 20. I was doing it in this campaign on turn 29. I was generating 150,000 gold from a 5-turn caravan supply, and I wasn't even at my extreme potential, at my highest potential in that campaign. And so it was just it was just kind of frustrating where they were implementing all these great mechanics, implementing these great lords, but then the foundation to the mechanics, some of the mechanics were just clearly broken, and it wasn't like anything that was difficult to do. It was just playing the game, and it was just unfolding into this massive broken mess, and it's just like, what is going on? And that's just like one of the reasons why the price point is just not worth it. And the things I'm going to talk about continuing in this bad part of the video is explaining why the price isn't worth it. And at the end, I'll sort of wrap it up. Because if I go to the caravan system, right? Like, look, 120,000, 131,000, 109, 112. Also, the fact that the caravan lord recruitment is bugged or broken at the moment, where I'm recruiting caravan masters on turn 29 at rank 34, simply because of the settlements that I own. Right now, you get a 1 recruit rank for every settlement you own for the caravan master, which that doesn't take any extended amount of testing to figure out. That's playing, again, 5-10 turns, and you're like, okay, that's not working as intended. So it was just very frustrating, again, to kind of discover those things that it's like, even me, for me that, I'm not a player that has the sole, intent on going in and busting a game, figuring out what's wrong, what's not working correctly. For me, this was just, as I'm progressing in the campaign, this was things that I was seeing. Now, in terms of things being busted and minimal changes and whatnot, another one is the sieges. Now, I did definitely notice that sieges were better in the fact that the AI utilized the supplies much more frequently, meaning, if they were building a tier 1 tower in a siege, they didn't just leave it at tier 1 for the entirety of the battle. If you left the tower alone, they would upgrade it to tier 2, tier 3, and so on to tier 4. They would upgrade the blockades, but really the sieges did not get the changes that I thought they would get. The supplies, the victory tickets is still a major problem. And even though they did upgrade the AI spending supplies more effectively, overall sieges are still a slog. They're still a grind. I still tried to auto resolve as many of them as I could because I just got tired of doing them. So it was really upsetting that something that's just been harped on by the community and creators for a long time now is again something that was obviously given a look at, but was just like, that's kind of good enough. Like let's move on. another thing that really was just frustrating is just the oversight for some faction mechanics, meaning the big one, obviously, the Changeling and the Empire. Now, currently on my YouTube channel, I am doing a little bit of testing. I've been testing as the Carl Franz on my Kick account and channel, and on YouTube I've been playing now as Festus and dealing with the Changeling, which obviously there are some things that are actually not as bad as we initially anticipated, but it's just the fact that the blatant oversight on how do factions like Beastmen and Warriors of Chaos and Champions of Chaos deal with the Changeling, because they can't upgrade the minor settlements. You know, they can't build the anti-corruption building. So if you are at war with the Changeling, and if they make him more aggressive, where he's not just sitting in Stirland, where he's actually branching out of Stirland, he's going to be causing you loads of problems, because you just can't ever figure out where he is. Not to mention, in my Festus campaign, if you guys haven't watched it, I'll load this one up here as well. I've wiped out his army in this campaign. We took out, it does appear he has a cult, but he's not recruiting a lord. He's not recruiting an army. His strength ranking is still at like 150, just went as where it was when I first initially wiped out his army. So like, what is going on there with the Changeling? Why is he not coming back? Why is he not recruiting a lord? Why is he not trying to, you know, cause chaos again? If we look here on the diplomacy side, he still has, you know, his strength ranking is 125, but he hasn't recruited another army. He's not making any money. Like, he's just stagnant. He's kind of like a Beastman faction that's been wiped out and is just waiting for the game to randomly spawn him back in. But he's not going to, because he's still tied to the cult building, where if we look at the corruption, he has a building providing 3 siege corruption, so we know he's tied to a cult somewhere in here, but he's just not doing anything. So it's just like, what's going on? Just what's going on there? It just doesn't quite make sense. And then another thing that I've noticed is, although the anti-player bias has been turned down, which is a good thing, I will say one thing that hasn't really made sense to me is how passive the AI has been against factions that they hate. The biggest one is in my Mother Ostankia campaign, where the High Elves are just perfectly content with sitting in Oath 1 not doing anything. Throughout the majority of the campaign, until I started conquering and taking over parts of Nagaron and dealing with Malekith and Marathi, they boarded those enemies. They have a negative aversion of and diplomatic relations of like minus 150, but they don't do anything. They don't launch the attack from either Malekith fighting the High Elves or High Elves going and fighting Malekith or Marathi or whoever it might be. They're not doing anything. They're just perfectly content with sitting in Oath 1, not doing anything, not expanding. Safri is perfectly happy. It's turn 91 and Safri is still alive, which before this update and patch, none of this would happen. Like, Tyrion would always come through, or Lariel would always come through, but they got loads of armies just sitting here not doing anything. And so it's almost as if they dialed it down too much in terms of AI passiveness, and it just doesn't make sense that you have where the AI has such a massive negative affinity towards, you know, chaos, towards Norska, towards the Dark Elves, and they're just not doing anything about it. So it was really frustrating to see sort of that change there. The next thing that was pretty frustrating for me was the whole aspect of the lore and trailers that Creative Assembly released for this DLC. With Mother Ostankia starting all the way over here in the Bleak Coast, not in Kislev. She's supposed to be the mother and protector of Kislev, and she's nowhere near Kislev. By the time I got over to Kislev by turn 40, all of Kislev was wiped out, and so there was technically nothing to protect. The Changeling being in the Empire, you know, giving the Empire yet again another major legendary lord to deal with, even though the trailers and lore side of things is him causing massive issues and massive pain for Cathay. He's nowhere near Cathay. Wan Bo, supposed to be the executioner and kind of the judge of Cathay. What's he doing? He's in Lustria. And I'm not a huge lore expert or knowledgeable on too much of the lore, but from the sounds of it, that's somebody else's lore that he's taking, being in Lustria, kind of being on the outskirts over here, you know, dealing with the lizardmen, and it's just, I just don't understand why put all that time and effort not only to write a new piece of lore for Wanbo, talking about dealing with Tzeentch and the Changeling and the ambush and this giant fight, and all these trailers showing, you know, them fighting certain enemies of chaos, when in the game it doesn't even matter. Why are you, Creative Assembly, wasting your time, wasting your limited time, your limited resources that you're providing to the game on things like lore, like those trailers, when it doesn't even amount to anything related to the game? It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of the player's time. It's a waste of your time, thinking like, oh, it's Wanbo going to be fighting against Tzeentch, or I initially thought that it was going to be Mother Ostankia kind of being up in the Eastern Oblast region, kind of protecting, against the Chaos Dwarves, against Norska, but they're just nowhere near it. So I just really did not understand the starting locations with the lore and the trailers, because it just makes absolutely zero sense. And with how things are appearing, where the resources for Warhammer 3 for the developers are so stretched thin and so limited, why are you having them put them, or maybe not making them do it, but why is the decision to put them where they are currently at, where they are, when it just doesn't follow anything, and it just definitely doesn't make sense, and it's very frustrating. I know lore and trailer necessarily doesn't make the ultimate decision in where a lord will be, or necessarily how much of the mechanics will be interpreted and shown in that case, but nonetheless it just is frustrating, because you could, that time and money and resources spent working on those things could obviously be spent on bug fixing, patching the game, fixing bugs, getting patches out more than once every 3 or 4 months, or a community update more than once every 2 months, or something like that. So it's just something I hope that's looked at least for the future DLCs and down the road, where if you're going to spend time and effort on something, then complete it, finish it, make it make sense, please. And kind of all of those things leading to the price of it, really, for me, this is kind of just a really personal thing, not as much as gameplay per se, but really for me, this DLC just shows a total and an utter lack of care by Creative Assembly's management. The developers, I cannot emphasize this enough, it is not the developers' fault for this situation. They are doing the best they can with the resources they've been given, with the people they've been given, with the time they've been given to do it. I don't understand why Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, and Warhammer 3 in general is sort of being given the cold shoulder in terms of resources, time, and money, when Warhammer and Total War Fantasy has been such a major cash grab and cash cow for Creative Assembly. Why is there not all hands on deck on making the final part in this series? Why is the focus not on Warhammer 3? Why are we not making this the best stinking Warhammer game that's ever been released? I just don't understand why it seems like the resources and money being made from this game are going to things like Hyenas and Pharaoh. Now, I know Pharaoh is a totally different part of Creative Assembly, but Hyenas, I'm sorry, Creative Assembly, Hyenas is not your thing. If you wanted to make a game like Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone and stuff like that, you needed to do that about 10 years ago. The time for making that kind of game is not right now, especially when the game that people know you for, that you've built your company on, your reputation on, your trust with the community that you have, is more likely than not really going to care about it if you don't take care of the game that they really do care about. Right now, I'd say there's about a 0% chance that anyone who really likes Warhammer is ever going to play Hyenas, because of the lack of care and attention that you're allowing the developers to give to this game. So why would they take the time to spend more money on a DLC that's almost half the price of the base game, let alone buy, I would imagine, probably at least a $60, maybe $70 game in Hyenas, for a game genre that you're not even familiar with, that you're not used to. You're trying to get into that market. And so it just is really evident, especially with excuse me, especially with certain community posts that were made by management, and just the overall kind of dumping on the community. I just do not understand the attitude towards Warhammer 3. It's almost as if it's like Warhammer 3 has been boring and just doesn't deserve the attention that, you know, the fan base wants it to have, and it's totally the opposite. It totally does. It needs to be finished. It needs to be finished right, and it's something that I personally, as you can probably tell in the tone of my voice, I've become very passionate about. And all that money that Warhammer is generating and has generated, it needs to come back. It needs to come back and stay within Total War, Warhammer Fantasy, or Historical. It needs to get back into being funded back into the game, get more development, get more hands-on, get more money, get more time into it, so we can get more patches, we can get more bug fixes, where things aren't taking 3 or 4 months to do a, you know, patch fix on 10 things and been like, don't worry, we're working on more stuff. Are you? Because it's really hard to believe that when it's 3 or 4 months in between big updates. And lastly, the last thing I want to talk about, it's not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but it's something I saw some content creators do, and it's something I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on. Is definitely, what does this mean? What does this DLC mean for the future of Warhammer 3 and Warhammer 3 DLC? You know, for the next DLC that's going to come out for the winter months, so probably right around Christmas time or the New Year. You know, what does this mean for the Thrones of Decay? The Thrones of Decay's big pull is going to be the Empire. The Empire, you know, I personally don't understand it, but the Empire is the number one played faction in Warhammer 1, 2, or 3. And I feel like even if this DLC does terrible in terms of sales, people just do not care about it whatsoever. I think the biggest thing that might keep people around is the Thrones of Decay DLC, because they want to see a big empire change. You know, they want to see some new lords, new units. You know, how are they going to be able to combat all these enemies with the Changeling? You got Festus, you have Khazrak. Kemler in patch 4.0 goes on a rampage. Durthu constantly keeps coming into the Empire as well. So what is the Empire going to be given, just for example? You know, what are the changes that the Dwarves are going to be given? Because the Dwarves just get dumped on by everything in the game. Dwarves are so incredibly boring in the game. I just have no incentive to play them. They are just so far behind. Now, and in terms of like Nurgle, I don't mind Nurgle. I actually enjoy him quite a bit, but there are definitely some changes there. And what are they going to do with those factions to make them fun? Because right now, if they take the same approach, I think anyway, if the same approach is given to the next DLC, where there's minimal changes really across the board, you know, the bug infused infested nightmare that you fix this thing, but two or three things pop up. The lack of consistent patches and updates to the game, compared with the super high price, because I doubt the price is going to get knocked down. I would imagine the $20 to $25 range is here to stay, due to quote unquote prices are up spiel that you're trying to get across. If that's the case, if you want the next DLC to succeed, then you have to deliver that price in terms of changes. You can't crank out another DLC like the Shadows of Change and expect people to be like, yeah, that is definitely worth half the price of the game. Because if you keep coming out with DLCs like this where things aren't working as intended, you know, you're not providing insight really to what's going on in terms of development. You're not providing the resources and manpower needed to do these changes. And what it's going to lead to is less people playing. You're going to have a smaller Total War community, which means you're going to be making less money. Which what's that going to lead to? Are you going to just end up canceling Warhammer 3 and then blaming it on, you know, the community for not spending enough money? Why would anybody want to spend money on a game that never sees a patch, a hot fix, you know, bug fixes, regular patches? Like, hey, we know this is a big problem. We're working on it. It's going to be out in a few days, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not trying to, compare game genres because it's very different. But if you look at Baldur's Gate 3, for example, they are cranking out patches and updates to the game way faster than this Warhammer 3 and Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires has seen in the entirety of its 2-year, almost, well, not quite 2 year, about a year and a half life span right now. And they've come out with more updates, more patches, more bug fixes in the last 2 weeks of that game's life than this game has seen in its entire life. And with that, like, if I don't think this DLC is necessarily the nail in the coffin for Warhammer 3, but if you mess up in the upcoming DLC for the Thrones of Decay, if you end up messing up the Prince and Emperor here in Call of France, I do feel like this very well could lead to the very unfortunate fall of Warhammer 3, because people, like, and myself included, people are just upset with the lack of communication, the lack of patches, and just the lack of care from upper management in Creative Assembly for Warhammer 3. So with that being said, I know going on over 40 minutes here. I know I talked about a lot. I hope you guys were able to kind of see where I'm coming from on the good things I've talked about, the bad things I've talked about. Definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys think, things you agree with, things you disagree with. I'm hoping some of these things that I've talked about in this video, by the time I release it and we've had time to read the patch notes, that some of these things that I've discussed are being addressed. I really do hope so, because all I want for this game is the success of this game. I love Total War. I love Warhammer. It's something that I didn't expect to really like when I started playing it 4 years ago, and I really just want to see it succeed. So definitely don't forget to hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and if you're enjoying the content on the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And until the next video or live stream, I hope you guys have a good one, and until then, I'll see you later. Bye.